Hello, it's Cave Cat again, once again with another exciting episode of Cave Cat's movie and TV reviews. As I've explained before in my Scruffy review, I can review more than just TV shows. I can also review movies as well, whether they're live action or animated, such as the one that we're looking at today. First off, Don Bluth is one of the most influential animators to have existed, whether it's from his start at the Disney Animation Studio or more famously when he left Disney in order to start his own animation studio. A lot of people remember him for his films that he's produced throughout the 80s and the 90s, whether they're good or bad. The one we're talking about today is one of my personal childhood favorites, which is All Dogs Go to Heaven. After the success of his previous three films, The Secret of Nim, An American Tale, and The Land Before Time, as well as the video games Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, Don Bluth got to work on his fourth animated feature, which we all know to be All Dogs Go to Heaven. The film was first released on November 17, 1989, which, unfortunately, was also the exact same day as that of Disney's The Little Mermaid. The film ended up getting curb-stomped financially by The Little Mermaid because of that, which established Disney as being the superior animation studio after their long string of box office failures. But even in spite of the mediocre box office ratings that All Dogs Go to Heaven ended up getting in theaters, it actually had pretty good sales when it was released on home video a year later. In fact, my grandma and my grandpa still own the original VHS even after all those years, and it was one of my favorite movies that I would watch whenever my family and I would visit them, up until I got my own copy of the movie for Christmas one year, and I will occasionally watch the copy I own. Just a little anecdote that all of you should know. So anyway, on to the plot. The film tells the story of a German shepherd named Charlie B. Barkin who ends up getting murdered by his former business partner, a vicious bulldog named Carface. Once that happens, Charlie gets sent to heaven because, in the words of the Whippet Angel, who would be given the name Annabelle in the sequel, all dogs go to heaven because, unlike people, dogs are naturally good and loyal and kind. Unfortunately, this does not sit very well with Charlie once he finds out that he's been murdered before his time was up. So because of that, he schemes to get out of heaven by stealing his life watch, winding it up, and returning back to Earth, despite Annabelle's warning that he can never come back once that happens. After Charlie has returned to Earth, he reunites with his best friend and sidekick, Itchy, a nervous dachshund, before he starts scheming on how to get back at Carface for bumping him off like that. At the same time, Charlie and Itchy also end up meeting a lonely orphan girl named Anne-Marie, who's being held prisoner by Carface in a bid to bet on various races. The reason for this is because Anne-Marie is revealed to have the ability to talk to animals, a little bit like Dr. Dolittle in a way, and if she talks to various animals about who will win the race, then it would give Carface the knowledge needed to make the bet and win it with ease. So because of that, Charlie and Itchy are able to help Anne-Marie escape. So now Charlie is the one who uses Anne-Marie in a bid to bet on races and events as well, sort of like what Carface was doing beforehand. But the only difference is that while Carface used Anne-Marie for his own selfish desires, yes, Charlie did also use Anne-Marie as well, but at least he was fair to her while doing it, such as using the money to help Anne-Marie buy new clothes. So now you understand why this is one of my favorite movies. Aside from the plot, I really enjoyed the film for its animation. Don Bluth is such a genius when it comes to animating the characters in his films, because the animation is so fluid that the movements flow so well with the characters. It's his usual style of animation, but it's as good as the animation in his other films, or even in some of the Disney animated films that he worked on back when he used to work at Disney. Another reason I love the film is because I really love the characters and how well they're portrayed. Charlie is the residential jerkish conman who is revealed to have a hidden heart of gold, especially when he rescues and ends up caring for Anne-Marie, despite the fact that he's been using her to win money in gambling. I also love that he was voiced by the late Burt Reynolds in his very first voice acting role. Itchy is Charlie's sidekick, who is nervous, uptight, and prone to having itchy spells whenever he gets nervous, as his name implies, and was voiced wonderfully by the late Dom DeLuise. Anne-Marie is the young orphan girl who's meant to lighten the mood of the story and serve as the morality pet to Charlie, helping him bring out his better nature, even though he tries to deny it at first. Here's an interesting yet unfortunate fact. Anne-Marie was actually voiced by the late Judith Barzey, with this being her only other animated voice role, alongside Ducky from The Land Before Time. But unfortunately, this was actually the last film that she ever starred in, because she ended up dying when she was only 10 years old, due to being a victim of homicide. Such a terrible way for a kid to die. But anyway, moving on. As for the villains, we have Carface, the main villain of the film, who was voiced by the late Vic Tayback in his penultimate role, and he really did a great job voicing Carface with such an intimidating and vicious atmosphere about him. Star Trek fans may also remember him for guest starring in the original series episode A Piece of the Action, where he played one of two mob bosses that Kirk and Spock attempted to make negotiations with. Now there's Killer, Carface's sidekick, who, despite his name, is actually rather timid and unwilling to actually do anything actively worthy of killing anybody, aside from wanting to squeeze someone's head with pliers or even claiming to have a ray gun. The late Charles Nelson Riley did a great job voicing Killer, as he was the perfect choice to give Killer that nervous and nerdy demeanor that fits his character perfectly. And now for the third and final reason that this is one of my favorite animated films. I really love the heart and emotion that went into this film. I say this because even though Charlie started out as a scumbag con artist at first, you can't help but feel for him with everything that he went through, whether it's getting murdered by Carface and getting sent to heaven, escaping from heaven just so he can try to take revenge on Carface, and especially manipulating Anne-Marie's talents just to try and spite Carface. You can tell that Don Bluth can really put a lot of emotion into a lot of the scenes of his films, when he's not trying to creep out audiences young and old. Speaking of creep, one scene in this film that really stands out as being rather frightening is Charlie's nightmare, where he ends up getting sent to the underworld due to Annabelle's warning about him never coming back to heaven seemingly coming true. The intensity and the frightening images are really high here, much like in a lot of his other films, whenever they decide to throw in some dark elements and frightening scenes to raise the tension of the film. Aside from the nightmare-fueled factor of the film, I also like the songs as well. Yes, you heard me right. Like most of Don Bluth's animated films, this film also has songs that really fit with the mood of the scene. My favorites being You Can't Keep a Good Dog Down and Let's Make Music Together. In the case of the latter, this is actually the film that first birthed the famous big-lipped alligator moment term that's been referenced a lot on the internet these days. For those who don't know, the big-lipped alligator moment is a scene in a TV show or a movie that doesn't really have much significance or structure to the plot, and once it's over, it's never brought up again. Even in spite of this, even though the scene is never brought up again after it's over, the alligator himself actually plays a pivotal role in the climax of the film. Also, as I mentioned before, the emotion and heart in this film is really high, especially near the end when Charlie ends up sacrificing himself, spoiler alert, in order to save Anne-Marie. And of course, it's this act of selflessness that allows Charlie to re-enter heaven again, which I thought was very heartwarming, yet cathartic at the same time. The film actually has a lot of catharticism to it now that you think about it. But even in spite of how cathartic and emotional the film can get at times, I still love the film for its plot, its characters, its songs, and especially the emotion. So you all know what that means. All Dogs Go to Heaven gets 10 stars. Even in spite of the fact that the film didn't do so good at the box office, it still proved to be popular enough to get a theatrical sequel 7 years later, an animated series that ran for 3 seasons, surprisingly enough, and especially a direct-to-video Christmas film that serves as a finale to said animated series. I remember watching All Dogs Go to Heaven 2 a few times, but my mom didn't like that one as good as the original film. I've seen a few episodes of the series, but I've never seen an All Dogs Christmas Carol. Not to mention that after All Dogs Go to Heaven was first released, it ended up paving the way for more films during the 1990s, ranging from Rockadoodle, Thumbelina, A Troll in Central Park, The Pebble and the Penguin, Anastasia, Bartok the Magnificent, and Titan A.E. Although the first 4 films during that era weren't very successful, Anastasia was the only box office hit during the 90s, while Bartok the Magnificent was okay, and we all know what happened with Titan A.E. Sometimes it just goes to prove to you that even the most skilled creators can have their ups and downs through life. Although there was the news back in 2020 that Don Bluth would return to doing animation, working on his own projects based on various fairy tales and Aesop fables. So let's hope that those will actually spark new interest in seeing the return of theatrical 2D animation. Now that that's all been said and done, that's a wrap for this episode of Cave Cat's Movie and TV Reviews. I hope that you all enjoyed this review, and just like before, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel for more videos from me. Until next time, later!